Detection tells you an attacker entered. Deception intelligence reveals what they wanted, how they moved, and what they may do next. When attackers can move across organization in seconds, waiting for another alert means surrendering to the initiative. Joining us today, Mr. Philip Varughese, the President, Strategic and Veteran AI, National Security and Cyber Intelligence, the Next Generation Defense Strategy. Before we dive into the topic, let's have a small video about Power of Knowing Forum. Welcome to Permanent Conclave with the fastest record e-crime breakout time now is 27 seconds. This conversation will examine how deception intelligence can expose advisory intent, reduce uncertainty, and return to initiative to defenders. Mr. Philip, a warm welcome. Mr. Philip, a warm welcome to our Power of Knowing Forum, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. Thank you so much. Good evening.
Sir, a small intro about yourself, your journey so far, sir, to the audience.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, one and all who joined the call today. My name is Philip Varughese. I lead the strategic growth at Cypherma, which is the world's first tailored intelligence firm. 23 years into the industry, where I deeply focus into artificial intelligence, national security, and next generation cyber defense. And today, focusing deeply into the tailored intelligence domain.
Thank you, sir. Sir, let's dive into the topic. Why must cyber defense move beyond detection, malicious activity to actively uncovering advisory intent through deception intelligence?
Yeah, so cyber criminals, as you are aware, right, 10 steps ahead of us in terms of their, tactics, techniques, and procedures to break into our systems. And today they are leveraging artificial intelligence to make it smarter and better for them at scale and speed. So that is exactly where the future of defense is going to be: cyber deception intelligence, which will help us to move into proactive defense. Yeah.
So we are looking at more at a point where we see AI is being used by the defendant and the penetratant. So that is where we see AI being there. What critical information remains invisible when security teams depend mainly on alerts, indicators, or of compromise and known attack signatures?
Yeah, very interesting question. So, in fact, when the traditional cyber defense is designed and built for traditional cyber threats and attacks, but whereas the cyber criminals are already moved to very sophisticated autonomous attacks, and attackers, they are pretty much today increasingly leverage to attack you with authenticated legitimate credentials. They are leveraging abused administrative tools, and they are moving between identity cloud and endpoints. They exploit edge devices with limited telemetry. They disable or manipulate logs when they're attacking, and they also hide within normal operational activity. And that is exactly where we need to go beyond the traditional alerts or indicators of compromises.
We have been talking about malware free attacks, right? So
Yeah.
how do malware free attacks, stolen identities, living off in the land techniques and across domain reduce the effectiveness of conventional detections?
Yeah, as just mentioned, so actually, the cyber criminals' new weapon of attack is nothing but artificial intelligence, right?
Correct.
So they
Yeah.
leverage artificial intelligence for making their attacks more intelligent, and they are leveraging AI for figuring out better base of exploitation. And they also leverage artificial intelligence to decide what to attack, when to attack, whom to attack, how to attack, even, right? So they leverage especially artificial intelligence to do vulnerability discovery and exploitation. They use AI to build self-learning swarm bots.
Okay.
They leverage AI to build malicious botnets, adaptive malwares, and they leverage AI to do cryptojacking. And also they leverage AI to break, data poisoning, machine learning poisoning, and even agent poisoning. Today,
Hmm.
they also leverage AI to do deepfake development and also build autonomous weapons and slaughter bots. Yeah.
So what I was looking at, some of the trend that was there is cloud strikes in 2026 global threat report states that average e-crime breakout is about 29 seconds, sir. With the fastest observed breakout is taking only 27 seconds. It
Uh-huh.
also reports that 82% of the detections in 2025 were malware free, right? And reflecting the increase of use of legitimate identities, trusted tools, and cross-domain movement across traditional security controls. And
Mhm.
what we also want to look at is detection finds malicious activity. Deception intelligence discovers the advisory behind it, adversely behind it, right? So that's the point that I think you're trying to drive. How do you decept intelligent transform a security team from passive observer into an active participant that shape the attacker's environment?
Yeah, so this is where the organizations need to move from a reactive response to proactive, predictive, and preemptive defense and resilience mode, right? The objective of deception intelligence is not to replace the traditional EDR, XDR, MDR, or traditional threat intelligence. It's about introducing a mechanisms for intelligence generation and gathering layer before the adversary hits you, right? And then the objective is to ensure that the adversary is getting revealed themselves before the actual attack happens, actually. Yeah.
Sir, we've seen that modern advisory is deploying isolated honeypots, right? So
Uh-huh.
now how is this modern advisory engagement differ from deploying isolated hotpots and writing or waiting for someone to intact or interact with them?
Very important question that it is. The traditional deception was based on honeypots, right?
Okay.
But the modern deception is not simply based on creating a fake server as a honeypot. The traditional deception is based on honeypots, which is mimicking a particular system. But the modern deception is imitating a whole environment by itself. And a particular mature adversary engagement program should include an exact replica of the particular customer's environment, depending upon the industry or specific segment they belong to, which includes the application, data, transactions, and users. And that is where we have to have a modern deception environment should have a multi-layered deception framework, which should be a combination of the very specific application that belongs to that particular organization, where you should be having decoy credentials, privilege accounts, honey tokens, API keys, cloud secrets, and also deceptive file shares and databases which belongs to your organization or your specific industry, specifically designed for attack paths that resonates and replicates your specific industry, specific applications. And you also should be having decoy applications and services that imitates your industry specific applications, simulated operation technology assets that is relevant to your industry, and also synthetic identities and data that is reflecting your applications and transactions. The whole the instrumented environments that should be recording an attacker behavior should also be part of the whole deception framework, that which can capture the whole attacker engagement with the deception environment as well, which actually help you to build a modern deception environment. Yeah.
When we are talking about deception, defenders
Mhm.
also learn from what they try to see in each of the environment,
Yep.
right? So if you look at that piece, how can defenders learn from attackers' target selection sequence
Yep.
of actions, dwell time, tools, reactions inside a deceptive environment? What could be these pointers, or how do we look at these pointers?
This is where how do you set up the deception environment itself is becoming very very important, and you need very deep expertise and experience and to build this deception environment. Once a deception environment and the framework is built, uh, the the cyber defense team should be looking at, once engagement is happening, what are the key assets which attracted the attention for a cyber criminal, and what kind of credentials being were tested during an attacker engagement, what kind of privilege escalations path was attempted by the cyber criminal groups, and what kind of C2I, the command and control infrastructure, was used in the whole engagement, what kind of TTPs, the tools, techniques, tactics, and procedures were preferred by the cyber criminal group, and what was the real motivation behind the whole attack by a cyber criminal, whether it is a financially motivated or an espionage focused or disruption oriented attack, and eventually what kind of defensive assumption the attacker exploited when they were engaging with the infrastructure. These are some of the key things that should be a focus for the cyber defense team to identify during a typical engagement by a cyber criminal group in a deception environment.
Uh, how do we look at the intelligence improvement? How can this intelligence improve threat hunting,
Yep.
detection engineering, vulnerability prioritization, and incident response?
As we mentioned, right, the future of real intelligence is deception intelligence. As a
Okay.
company, as IFOMA, we are very deeply into deception intelligence. In fact, we are the world's first tailored deception intelligence, industry-specific deception intelligence organization in the world, and we have global deployment and instance of deception installation. What we are seeing is the intelligence that you get through the deception intelligence is 100% real, true, validated intelligence, which you can see real time, right? And this intelligence is straight away can be consumed and should be consumed for various cyber defense operations, as you rightly mentioned. And this intelligence can be used for real time MITRE attack mapping, for example, to create new threat hunting hypothesis in the original environment. The new SIM and XDR, EDR, MDR detection rules can be developed as part of the intelligence that you are coming across. The new identity control improvements can be enhanced within your organization. Purple team can consume this intelligence for their new age purple team scenario development. The whole attack path remediation can be improvised based on intelligence that you're getting from the deception intelligence. The deception intelligence also can help you to define scenarios at the board level, to define the new age risk, the cyber risk and resilience for your organizations as well. So if you look at the deception intelligence, this is actually changing the economics of defense by creating an uncertainty for the attacker, while it is giving a lot of contextualized intelligence for the organization for the proactive and predictive and preventive defense altogether.
I think what we are seeing at the modern deception is not simply about creating a fake server, right? So the maturity advisory engagement programs can include decoy credentials and privileged accounts, right? Then
Yep.
honey taps, AI, API keys, cloud secrets, deceptive file shares and databases, false attack paths, and decoy applications and services, simulated operational technology assets, right? And
Yep.
synthetic identity and data, which you mentioned some time back, where you look at synthetic data as well.
Yep.
Now, instrumented environments that record attackers' behavior also, because what the attacker is able to understand our behavior. Now we have to go back and see at the other side as well. When we look at getting attacked as well, we should, how do we look at defining, right? The value really emerges is when which assets attacked, who are the intentions, and what credentials were tested, whether there are any leak in the credentials. I was doing one user access review recently, Philip sir. What
Mhm.
I found was there were a lot of users and service accounts still active after the user has left as well. So
Yep.
these are some of the challenges that we see. What credentials are lying unattended? How do I get access to them? So I think what we also can look at threat hunting hypothesis, right? And that is very important for us. Then you look at new SIEM and XDR detections, right? That could be one of the. Now Maitri engaging defines the deception as continued process, not a fire or forget instance, right?
Yeah.
Technology deployment reports that came across 9 advisory engagements operations. It gathered average of 40 new pieces of intelligence per operation compared to with the 2 intelligent initial detections without any advisory engagement. So that's the point that we see when we look at advisory. Defenders greatest advantage is not knowing every attack is it in control the environment or which attacker must be operative. So that's
Yeah.
the point that we want to drive. Now, where should organizations place deceptive assets across identity, cloud, endpoints, applications, operational technology to generate intelligence without creating new risks?
Yeah. So, in our experience, when we are deploying large scale deception intelligence capabilities, uh, we ideally recommend a totally different environment altogether, which needs to be placed as a digital twin for the organization, and then exactly place deception engine or deception solution outside their environment, right?
Okay.
So we usually place it in a cloud environment which is mimicking the whole environment of a particular customer, which is mapped to that particular industry. So if you look at a particular industry like oil and gas, then you will be having upstream, midstream, downstream.
Hmm.
Whereas in a banking environment, you will be having credit card, loan operations, retail banking, etc. So you need to replicate exactly what are those applications, data, identities, and transactions which are relevant for an industry. That needs to be exactly replicated as a whole environment, as a digital twin outside the client's environment, which will make the most impactive and effective framework.
Got it, sir. Now, coming to the attack paths, where
Yeah.
we've seen which attack paths and crown gel assets should be determined whether where decoy, honey tokens, and deceptive credentials are deployed. How do you look at this point?
I think this is the most important aspect in a deception intelligence, capability that you need to look at, right? Anybody can set up a decoy application or the deception environment per se,
Okay.
right? Which is easily discovered by the cyber criminal group that it is a deception or a fake environment, right? It is not about setting up the environment alone.
Hmm.
It is not the way how it has to be. I mean, it is just the infrastructure. The whole deception placement must begin with a threat modeling, right? Not just a product deployment in a particular environment, right? So this is where, as I mentioned in my previous question, that so you need to develop a framework that is very much in line with that industry specific capabilities, applications, infrastructure, and the assets, right? And that is one. And second, this whole tailored deception framework should also include privilege identity pathways that is resembling or reflecting the whole infrastructure that you are mentioning, and the active directory and identity infrastructure that is relevant to that particular customer segment, the cloud secrets, keys, and administrative roles that is again aligned to your industry and industry specific applications, sensitive data repositories, which is again relevant and related to your industry and your organization, CI/CD environments that is again relevant to your set applications, backup and recovery systems, which again resonates to your overall multi-layered infrastructure, setup. The IT and operational technology segmentation
Hmm.
needs to be resembling. A remote access infrastructure should be set up, and high value executions and executive accounts to be set up, which will actually reflect the originality of a real environment, which is exactly aligned with your industry specific application, whether you are belonging to a particular oil and gas, retail, or manufacturing. Accordingly, these things should be coming together in a multi layered deception environment, right? And then the whole transaction life cycle has to follow this whole framework and the ecosystem by itself. Otherwise, it is very difficult, very easy for a cyber criminal to go and identify that they are in a fictitious environment in no time. Yeah.
I think what you are also saying is it's not that it has to be a holistic thing. There are industry specific, domain specific uh, deceptive environments that you need to create and see how it works. Because, as you mentioned, there could be oil and natural gas, then there can be banking, there can be telecom, there can be manufacturing. So these are all different kind of industries, but you cannot have one solution which fits everybody. So you will have to look at different sets. And how can organizations make deceptive assets believable enough to attract advisories without exposing real architecture, data, or business processes?
Very important, and this is where your expertise as an organization is going to be playing a very, very crucial role, right? So, and that is where Cypherma as an organization, we built this expertise and capability long time ago, where we have built very industry specific, value chain based, industry specific deception capabilities, very specific for industry segments, right? So now it is not about, as I mentioned, creating a certain set of infrastructure in place. It's not about creating a digital twin.
Yeah.
It's about creating a deception environment which should be sitting naturally on a path an attacker is likely to be sweeping in, or imitate the whole environment that attacker is deliberately seeking, right? How do you really do that? And that is that requires a bit of techniques, tactics, and procedure from your side to help the attacker to even identify that there is an environment like this, so to create that interest, right? So you need to do a bit of TTPs to really to get that visibility for attacker also, that there is something that is available out there as an interesting target. A poorly designed deception can fail also, right? So it's not about just creating the deception environment, all these TTPs, but if it is not designed poorly, the whole environment will be there, but attacker engagement will not be happening out there. So some of the key reasons why a deception environment can fail also, because the assets what you set up, if it is looking like an artificial asset, obviously the cyber criminal will be able to identify that in no time it is a fake and fictitious environment. If the configuration is not matching a real environment, right, obviously they will be able to figure out in no time.
Mm.
If it is positioned like outside the likely attack paths in a targeted chain, the attacker will be easily able to find it out. If it is actually generating alert without any operational context of a typical attack, again that can fail.
Mm.
Unfortunately, if it is sometimes, the deception intelligence framework, if it is built within the organization, obviously an accident engagement by a legitimate administrator interaction to that particular deception environment, again it can cause a lot of problem. And sometimes it can create unnecessary services or vulnerabilities happening in your environment, if it is within your environment and it's not properly configured and controlled as well, right? And lastly, if it is not updated as a production environment changes, then also the problem is actually it can be easily discovered that it is a fictitious environment which is like a honeypot system. So these are some of the things which can be easily discovered by the cyber criminal group, because they are 10 steps ahead of in terms of capability and expertise to identify a fictitious environment if it is fake. So it is easily discovered for them, and they'll not be able to engage you in that deception environment. And obviously your whole investment cannot give you the desired yielding or outcomes as part of the investment. Yeah.
Very important point. Now we are talking about environments which are built to test these things. Now, what is that we can look at production environment? When we look at production environment, what security, privacy, legal, and operational safeguards are required before a deception is introduced into production environments?
Yeah, so this is where we strongly recommend that your deception environment has to be outside your original in-house or even your original production environment. It it has to be digital twin
Hmm.
outside your original environment, and you need to have a clear clearly defined boundary between the deception environment and your original infrastructure, right? Point number one.
Mm.
Point number two is, yeah, obviously it has to be completely isolated from the real assets, and it becomes a completely independent ecosystem outside, which is very much a replica of your original environment. So that is where it becomes very, very important. And a decoy placed, somewhere it becomes a noise, but it could be decoy placed in an attacker's path becomes intelligence, but it has to be really in line with your original infrastructure, which has to be a replica of your environment, which has to be seen as a real world original infrastructure to a particular client. So when an attacker is coming to a particular organization's infrastructure, it has to be so difficult for them to identify or believe that it is a fictitious environment. They should be having two environments, but whoever is engaging, it has to be feeling that they are actually in an original environment.
Got it, sir. Now, with that, what I see is deception place must begin with threat modeling, not with the production deployment is or a product deployment is what you are saying. The priorities areas must include privilege identity pathways, active directory and identity infrastructure, cloud secrets, right? Keys, administration rules. All these things are very important for a setup to be available, as you rightly said, for them to see whether they are trying to target a production environment, right? So
Mhm.
that's the point. And Microsoft in June 2026 guidance described using keys and secrets in Azure Key
Mhm.
Vault so that access to honey tokens triggered a Microsoft Sentinel alert. This demonstrated how deception is moving directly into cloud native identities and secret management workflows. That's the important point. And yeah, again in June 2026, researcher pre-printed uh, assessing all 250 techniques in Maitri attack V18.1 found that only 80 techniques are 32% presented in the realistic opportunity of infrastructure decoys. They the finding reinforces that effective decoys require deliberate placement rather than blanket deployment. So, if you have to look at, you have to make it a real environment for them to test and come back to that. So, with that, how can deception intelligence be operationalized inside the SOC so that it produces faster decisions rather than another isolated environment or stream of alerts?
Yeah, so it's extremely important that, so the intelligence has no value if it is not actionable, if it is
Mhm.
not timely, if it is not contextualized and personalized, right? So a true good deception intelligence will a framework will produce high value intelligence for you in real time, right? The question is actually, if you're not operationalizing that intelligence into your actual cyber defense operations, then it has no value. So there has to be a mechanism where the intelligence that is gathered from the deception environment has to be real time fed into your security operations to contextualize, enrich your cyber defense operations, which can help you to move from a reactive response to more of a proactive defense, and also will help you to achieve a few things that we discussed earlier. To help you to really improve your detection algorithms or rules in your SIM and SOC, right? Which will help you to do better red team exercise, threat hunting exercise, vulnerability management. You also know who are the threat groups who are really, really interested in you, and you know their tactics and procedures. You know what exactly the vulnerabilities they're targeting, which you can take it for prioritized remediation. So all those things will become very, very easy for you if you're really operationalizing that particular intelligence, which is coming from your real-time deception intelligence to your actual cyber defense operations.
Got it, sir. Now, coming to the next question, how should deception telemetry integrate with all the tools like SIEM, XDR, SOAR, threat intelligence platforms, and incident response workflows?
Yeah. So if the deception intelligence framework is completely set up outside your traditional environment, definitely you will be able to see in real time what is happening in your deception framework, which is your digital twin environment, right? So that intelligence feed has to be automatically collected, analyzed, and integrated your security operations. But the SOC team also, the cyber defense team also should be having an oversight into the whole deception framework. And what they should be also looking at, the whenever there is an attacker interacts with a deceptive asset, that log has to be collected and fed. The event has to be enriched with identity, endpoint, cloud, and network to understand the actual context. And also the adversary techniques, tactics, and procedures should be mapped to understand the behavior of the attacker. The analyst should see that, whether this controlled observation or immediate containment is appropriate or not in their original infrastructure. And new intelligence also can be leveraged for real-time detection rules, as we mentioned, or create threat hunting hypothesis and improve the security controls in the original environment as well. This whole discovery of the intelligence in a deception environment can also be documented and reused across the security program within their organization as well. So these are the ways they can actually leverage for proactive and predictive security operations.
Got it, sir. Uh, what skills and operational model changes the requirement for SOC analysts, threat hunters, incident responders, and business leaders to act on deceptive intelligence?
So this is again, I would put it as an individual aspect from a SOC analyst perspective who are actually engaging with the deception intelligence. Here is where one fundamental skill that I would strongly recommend every SOC analyst or the cyber defense operational lead should be having, which is nothing but curiosity, right? It is not about just receiving the alert from a deception environment that needs to be considered for your security operations for all the things that we discussed. It's about having that curiosity for the security operations center analyst to understand the real engagement of the threat actor in that deception environment, capture everything what it is really happening on the ground at an individual level, not at a log level alone, because that is where you're understanding the behavior of the threat actor, you're understanding the actual intent of the threat actor, right? The whole, you'll be able to anticipate what exactly the threat actor is, because you can do an effective detection and defense only when you can think like an attacker, right? So
Mhm.
that is where curiosity plays a very, very crucial role beyond your traditional tick box exercise of the log analysis, which is already done by a particular SIM or EDR MDR tool, and then giving you an alert, right? So that is where the SOC team has to be going beyond their traditional analysis of the logs, but to elevate the curiosity to really look at the actual things what is happening in the deception environment through the eyes of a threat actor by themselves.
Got it, sir. Now, what we also look at is leaders should avoid celebrating the number of decoy deployments. The
Yep.
real measure is whether deception changes defensive decisions or reduces operational risk. Is what. Again, when we are looking at one of the insight and an example that I got from is that the UK National Cyber Security Center tested cyber deception with 121 organizations and 14 commercial providers at 10 product trials across environments, including cloud, operational technology. Its findings showed that deception can detect novel threats, enrich threat intelligence, but it is not a plug and play, right? And the NCSC identified weak outcome metrics, inconsistent technology, and configuration risk as a major adoption barriers. That's the UK National Security Cyber Center's research that they have done, and that's the outcome that they have. Deception creates a value only when attackers' behavior becomes faster and better defensive discussions,
Yeah.
right? That is what I think is what we are seeing. What will AI enabled deception intelligence strategy look like, and how can leaders use it responsibly to build preemptive cyber resilience?
Very, very important aspect that we need to consider, because cyber criminals or threat actors, threat groups, they started leveraging AI long time back
Yeah.
to make their attack more intelligent and targeted and successful, right? So when we started using, when I say we, means general public started using one or two generative AI solutions 2 3 years back, the cyber criminal groups already created more than 28 notorious generative AI solutions to launch attacks in the most autonomous and efficient way. More than 28, when the general public started relying upon only on chat GPTs and Geminis of the world. So that is where the situation. Now, if you look at the last 3 4 years, they have gone ahead to the next level. And yesterday night, I'm sure most of you are aware right now, is that there is a major breach news that came up yesterday, that light LLM, a major AI capability, was breached, and nearly more than 4,500 organizations' critical sensitive data was exposed through that. Right. The question is actually, AI itself is used for launching attacks, and today AI systems are also being a target for cyber criminal groups. Right, AI itself is becoming a next attack surface for cyber criminals to launch attack. Now, here is where we should also look at how do we leverage the same AI to defend more
Mm.
predictive, proactive, and preemptive one. Right. So, in my suggestion, in the deception context, the AI can also help you significantly. Right. So the AI can help you to build your deception system to generate very fictitious environment, but very much believable synthetic identities and environments, right? Which is like looking like real. It can also help you adapt decoy services to an attacker's techniques based on the original TTPs followed by a threat group. It can also correlate activities across long time periods for the whole interactions by a threat groups in a particular environment. It can also distinguish automated scanning from a targeted intrusion within an environment. It can also summarize the whole attacker behavior for an analyst in no time. It can also help you recommend investigative actions based on the interaction by a threat group in an environment altogether. It can help you create new threat hunting hypothesis, red teaming scenarios, right? Blue teaming scenarios, and attack path discovery. It can also help you adjust your deceptive pathways in infrastructure within the deception environment. There are plenty of ways actually AI can help you in the deception environment by itself for you to have that sophisticated deception capability.
So, however, when we look at autonomous deception risk, right,
Mhm.
there could be lot of things like incorrect attributes, right, and unintended service disruptions. These are few things: excessive attacker engagement and exposure to sensitive architecture, because these are some of the deceptive risks that we see which get introduced also. So board should ask few questions. What I understand is, what strategy objective does deception support?
Yeah.
That's the first question that I think. What threats and assets are in scope? Because scoping defines how the cybersecurity program itself gets into place, and how do we get the buy-in? What actions may be automated, because
Yeah.
you cannot have automation for everything, then
Yeah.
we are getting into a trouble there. How much of human authorization also is required? That plays a very important point while measuring the success of any cybersecurity implementation or pointers that we should. How also, when you do such implementation, how is it measured, right? So those are the some key points. Again, coming back to UK's NCSC started in March to the future of AI enabled defense systems may retain more contact, initiate target investigation, and deploy deceptive techniques to gather intelligence on slow or subtle intrusions, right? It is also warned that automated responses can create service disruptions or operations failure when poorly designed. So that's the point that they wanted to look at. AI should not automate realization or innate, and should help defenders understand whether advisory before the advisory understands the enterprise itself, right? So that's the point that we want to look at. With this, I think what we want to look at, one last pointer is, what or which weakness creates strongest case of deceptive intelligence in an organization? So what could be one pointer that we want to? This is the last point for the day, which I wanted to take it from you.
I think that's a very, very important point. So deception intelligence is should be considered as one of the critical measures for you to really understand the real-time, proactive, predictive, and preventive intelligence and defense. Right. So because that's the only way where you will see 100% validated, finished intelligence in real time that you can see in action. Right. So I would strongly recommend that deception intelligence should be considered as a roadmap item for many of the organization, which needs to be sector tailored. It should not be a glorified honeypot deployment, right? But it has to be very much tailored, contextualized to your organization to meet the real outcomes, which is gathering intelligence, which can help you to really move from reactive response to proactive and predictive and preemptive defense. So that is where Cypherma as an organization, we help customers in two options. One, we help them to have autonomous defense, by autonomous deception capabilities. But we also help customers to a very, very custom tailored deception intelligence framework, which will really meeting their very specific, industry specific applications, regional specific intelligence, contextualized technology infrastructure setup, including applications, data, users, and transaction, which will become more effective as well. So definitely, I would strongly recommend that organizations should definitely put deception intelligence capability as a roadmap item for their organizations, and as early as they will be able to look into that, their resilience could be exponentially increased in terms of their intelligence driven operations.
Thank you for that, Philip sir. I have few takeaways. I have few questions which have come on the chat. One, I'll just bring it here.
Yeah.
Give me a second, please. So on the chat, I see one person from YouTube, Joel, says, "Great topic, love it." So, and the next point that I see is excellent. These are the two pointers but there are little offline questions that are there, which I will post it in the comments after our session. We will respond to those questions as we are. There are few takeaways that I have listed out based on what we've discussed in the last 40 minutes of our discussion. I'm just going to take those notes and read it out to the audience. The key takeaways in this session is detection alone no longer preserves defenders initiative is what we want to start with. Attackers increasingly use trusted identities, legitimate tools, and cross-domain movement. Organizations must understand the intent, behavior, not merely identify malicious artifacts. That's the first point that we should look at. The second point is the goal is to uncover advisory priorities, techniques, and likely next actions. Then we use the knowledge to improve hunting, detection, containment, and risk decisions. This is the second point that I want. The third point is deceptive assets must sit on a realistic attacker pathway or imitate resources an advisory is likely to seek. Unfocused deployment creates noise and false confidence. These are the few pointers that I wanted to take as a takeaways from the session that I have taken last 45 minutes, Philip sir. Any final pointers that you want to add for the audience before we conclude?
I think thank you so much for having this forum, and really congratulate and thank you for having this forum here from Preeminent Conclave to share our knowledge and experience with our esteemed audiences here, and really appreciate that, and request you to continue this practice so that we can connect, share, and collaborate, and then help our society and nations to be smarter, safer, and better. We really appreciate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Philip sir. Thank you for bringing together your expertise, experience across artificial intelligence, national security, cyber defense strategy, and growth to help us examine a critical change in the defender's mindset. The central message is uh, from this conversation is very clear. Cyber security cannot remain waiting the game in which defenders depend on the attackers creating a deceptible signal. Organizations must increasingly shape the environment, create uncertainty for the advisory and convert is every interaction into an intelligence is what we wanted to bring it out. With this, we would like to conclude our session. Thank you for joining us, Philip sir. It's been an honor to have you on our podcast, and thank you, audience, for joining us today.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate and have a great evening.